across the forgotten landscapes of our world, entire civilizations still lie hidden beneath forests, deserts, and mountains. Their temples remain buried beneath the earth. Their cities are carved into cliffs. Their monuments stand in silence, surviving long after the people who built them disappeared. These are not myths or ancient legends. They are real archaeological discoveries that continue to challenge historians and archaeologists alike. From vast underground worlds and forgotten mountain sanctuaries to mysterious fortresses swallowed by the desert, each site reveals a civilization that left behind extraordinary achievements, but almost no answers. So dim the lights, settle in, and join me as we uncover some of the most remarkable forgotten places ever discovered. The Forgotten Stone Sanctuary hidden beside Iran's desert. Far beyond Iran's famous ancient cities, where dry mountains meet the edge of the desert, sits a village unlike almost anywhere else on Earth. Small stone homes, narrow winding paths, ancient walls that seem to grow directly from the landscape. At first glance, it feels less like a village, and more like the forgotten remains of a civilization that simply refused to disappear. This remarkable place is known as Makunik. Often called one of Iran's oldest surviving villages, it has puzzled travelers and archaeologists for generations. Located in the remote province of South Khorasan, close to the border with Afghanistan, Makunik lies in one of the driest regions of the Iranian plateau. Today only a few hundred people still live here, surrounded by rocky hills, desert plains, and fields that have supported life for centuries despite the harsh climate. The village immediately stands apart from almost every other settlement in the region. Many of its oldest houses are astonishingly small. Doorways barely reach shoulder height. Windows are tiny. Some rooms require visitors to bend nearly in half before entering. The buildings seem designed for a world very different from our own. For decades, these unusual homes gave rise to one of the region's most famous legends. Stories spread that Makunik had once been inhabited by a race of unusually small people. Visitors who walked through the ancient streets often found themselves wondering the same thing. Why would anyone build homes this small? Although archaeology has found no evidence of a separate race of tiny humans, researchers believe the answer lies in the village's remarkable history. For centuries, families survived in one of the harshest environments imaginable. Building smaller houses meant less material was needed. Low ceilings trapped warmth during freezing desert nights. Tiny entrances reduced the amount of dust and wind entering each room. Every feature reflected generations of careful adaptation to the landscape rather than mystery alone. Yet the village still refuses to give up all of its secrets. Archaeological discoveries around Makunik suggest that people have lived in this region for thousands of years. Ancient cemeteries, stone foundations, pottery fragments, and early settlements scattered across the surrounding hills point to an exceptionally long history of human occupation. The old quarter itself feels almost untouched by time. The houses are built almost entirely from local stone mixed with mud. Rather than standing apart from the mountains, they blend into them. From a distance, it can be surprisingly difficult to distinguish where the natural hillside ends and the village begins. Its narrow alleys twist between tightly packed homes, creating a maze that protects residents from intense desert winds and summer heat. Nothing here feels accidental. Everything appears carefully shaped by generations who understood exactly how to survive in this unforgiving landscape. Unlike the grand capitals of ancient Persia, Makunik was never a place of kings. No enormous palaces were built here. No towering temples dominated the skyline. Instead, its importance comes from something much quieter. It preserves an almost complete picture of how ordinary people adapted to life in one of the world's harshest environments. Local traditions add another layer to the mystery. For much of its history, the village remained remarkably isolated. Travellers rarely passed through. Many customs survived here long after they had disappeared elsewhere across Iran. Older residents even recalled traditions unlike those found in neighbouring regions, giving the village an almost timeless character. The surrounding landscape reinforces that feeling. Dry valleys stretch toward distant mountains. Stone ridges cast long shadows across the desert floor. Silence dominates the horizon. Standing among the ancient houses, it is easy to understand why so many legends emerged from this place. Every corner seems to whisper that another forgotten story lies hidden beneath the stones. Today, Makunik is recognized as one of Iran's most remarkable historic villages, not because of gold, not because of famous rulers, but because it preserves an extraordinary example of human resilience where architecture, landscape, and centuries of tradition merged into a settlement unlike any other. Hidden beside the desert stands a forgotten stone sanctuary, a village built for survival, a place shaped by isolation, mystery, and time, and one of the most unusual archaeological landscapes in all of Iran. The buried sanctuary of the Copper Hills. Hidden among the towering cliffs of the Judean desert lies a cave that protected one of archaeology's greatest mysteries for thousands of years. There are no towering temples, no magnificent palaces, no forgotten cities buried beneath the sand. Instead, a narrow cave overlooking a silent valley, a bundle wrapped inside an ancient reed mat. Hundreds of remarkable objects carefully hidden from the outside world. For centuries, no one knew they were there. Today, this extraordinary place is known as Nahal Mishmar Cave, often called the Treasure Cave, and even after decades of research, archaeologists still cannot explain why its priceless contents were hidden so carefully beneath the desert hills. The cave lies west of the Dead Sea, deep within the rugged landscape of the Judean desert in present-day Israel. Towering limestone cliffs surround the valley. Dry riverbeds cut through the rocky terrain. For much of the year, the only sound is the desert wind passing through the canyons. It is a landscape that feels completely isolated, the perfect place to hide something that was never meant to be found. Everything changed in 1961. While exploring the caves of the Judean desert, archaeologist Preah Khan entered a small chamber unlike any he had seen before. Hidden inside a narrow crevice was an ancient woven mat. At first it seemed unremarkable, but as the excavation continued, object after object began to emerge from the darkness. By the end of the discovery, more than 400 artifacts had been recovered from a single hiding place. The collection immediately astonished archaeologists around the world. Beautiful copper crowns, ceremonial scepters, decorated mace heads, stone vessels, ivory carvings, tools unlike anything previously discovered from the same period. Many of the objects had been created using sophisticated metalworking techniques that required remarkable skill, proving that the craftsmen of the Copper Age possessed abilities far beyond what historians had once imagined. Yet the greatest mystery was never the objects themselves. It was why they had been hidden. The cave shows no evidence of being an ancient settlement. No large community lived there. No workshops produced the artifacts inside. Someone deliberately carried these valuable ceremonial objects high into the desert cliffs before carefully concealing them beneath an ancient reed mat. Then they disappeared. They never returned. For more than 60 years, archaeologists have searched for an answer. One theory suggests the treasures belonged to a nearby sanctuary, perhaps at En-Gedi, and were hidden during a time of conflict to protect them from destruction. Another proposes they were sacred objects placed inside the cave as part of a religious ceremony whose meaning has long been forgotten. Without written records, no explanation can be proven with certainty. The surrounding landscape only deepens the mystery. Standing outside the cave today, the view stretches across barren valleys toward the shimmering waters of the Dead Sea. The cliffs are steep. The paths are difficult to climb. It is hard to imagine why anyone would choose such a remote location unless they intended these objects to remain hidden forever. The discoveries also transformed our understanding of prehistoric society. Long before great empires dominated the ancient Near East, skilled metalworkers were already producing ceremonial objects of extraordinary beauty and complexity. Every crown, every scepter, every carefully shaped copper artifact tells the story of a culture whose beliefs have almost completely vanished from history. Today, Nahal Mishmar Cave remains one of the most important archaeological sites in the Judean desert. Not because of buried gold, not because of famous rulers, but because it preserved an entire collection of sacred treasures exactly where their owners left them more than 5,000 years ago. Hidden among the copper-coloured hills stands a forgotten sanctuary, a cave filled with remarkable craftsmanship, enduring mystery, and one of archaeology's greatest unanswered questions, the lost sanctuary of the Red Canyon. Hidden among the red sandstone hills of western Turkey stands a monument unlike any other. There are no towering columns, no marble statues, no magnificent temples built by kings. Instead, a gigantic stone facade carved directly into the face of a mountain, ancient symbols, weathered inscriptions, and a doorway that leads nowhere at all. For centuries, travellers wondered whether this strange monument marked the entrance to a forgotten palace, a sacred sanctuary, or the tomb of a legendary ruler. Today, this remarkable place is known as the Midas Monument at Yazilikaya, part of the ancient Phrygian city often called Midas City. And despite generations of study, many of its greatest secrets remain hidden within the stone. The monument lies among the rocky highlands of central Anatolia, where wind and time have sculpted the landscape into a maze of valleys and towering cliffs. The surrounding hills glow deep shades of red and gold beneath the afternoon sun. At first glance, the region appears almost empty, yet scattered across the sandstone ridges are the remains of one of the most remarkable civilizations of the ancient Near East. The Phrygians settled here nearly 3,000 years ago, long before the arrival of Alexander the Great, long before the Roman Empire reached these lands. They carved homes, storehouses, stairways, and sacred monuments directly into the soft volcanic rock, creating a landscape where architecture and nature became almost impossible to separate. The greatest of these monuments is the famous Midas facade. Rising more than 17 meters above the valley floor, it resembles the front wall of an enormous temple. Its surface is covered with intricate geometric patterns carved with astonishing precision. At the very center stands a tall rectangular doorway, yet anyone expecting to walk inside quickly discovers something unexpected. There is no chamber beyond it, no hidden room, no passage leading into the mountain. The doorway is entirely symbolic. It opens onto solid stone. For archaeologists, that single detail raises one of the site's greatest mysteries. If the entrance leads nowhere, what was its true purpose? Most researchers believe the monument served as a sacred shrine dedicated to the Phrygian mother goddess, known to later civilizations as Cybele. Religious ceremonies may have taken place before the great facade, with offerings placed inside the shallow niche carved into its center. Rather than inviting people inside, the monument may have represented the symbolic home of the goddess herself. Nearby, ancient inscriptions mention the name Midas. For generations, this led many visitors to associate the monument with the legendary King Midas, the ruler said to possess the golden touch. Whether the inscription refers to the famous king or another Phrygian ruler remains uncertain. Like so much surrounding the monument, the answer has been lost with time. The sanctuary was never an isolated structure. The surrounding plateau preserves an entire ancient settlement. Rock-cut houses overlook the valleys. Storage chambers disappear beneath the cliffs. Monumental tombs were carved into nearby hillsides. Narrow pathways connect one section of the city to another, revealing a landscape carefully shaped over many centuries. Everywhere archaeologists excavate, new traces of daily life continue to emerge. Pottery fragments, stone tools, ancient cisterns that once collected precious rainwater. Together they reveal a thriving community that adapted remarkably well to the rugged landscape, transforming the natural cliffs into one of the ancient world's most distinctive cities. Eventually, however, the Phrygian kingdom declined. New empires spread across Anatolia, the Persians, the Greeks, the Romans. Although later generations continued using parts of the settlement, the great sanctuary gradually fell silent. Wind carried sand across the stone floors. Rain slowly softened the carved surfaces. Century after century, the monument remained standing while the civilization that created it disappeared from history. Today, Yazilikaya remains one of Turkey's most extraordinary archaeological landscapes, not because of buried treasure, not because of forgotten palaces, but because it preserves the memory of a civilization that carved its beliefs directly into the living rock. Hidden among the Red Canyons stands a forgotten sanctuary, a monument without a doorway, a city shaped from stone, and one of the ancient world's most enduring mysteries. The forgotten mountain city above the clouds. High in the mountains of southwestern Turkey lie the silent remains of a city that once stood among the clouds. There are no crowded streets, no bustling marketplaces, no voices echoing between marble buildings, only weathered temples, broken fountains, towering columns rising above the mist. For centuries, this remarkable city slowly disappeared from history. Its monuments collapsed beneath powerful earthquakes. Its roads vanished beneath forests and wild grasses. Generation after generation passed without realizing that one of the Roman world's greatest mountain cities still rested high above the valleys. Today, archaeologists know this extraordinary place as Sagalassos, and it remains one of the best preserved ancient cities anywhere in the Mediterranean. Sagalassos stands nearly 1,500 meters above sea level, on the southern slopes of the Taurus Mountains. The surrounding landscape is breathtaking. Steep valleys stretch toward distant peaks. Pine forests blanket the hillsides. Cold mountain springs emerge from the rocks before flowing through the valleys below. It is difficult to imagine a more beautiful setting for an ancient city. Yet its location also made it one of the most isolated. Long before the Romans arrived, people had already settled these mountains. The region was home to the Pisidians, an independent people known for defending their rugged homeland against powerful neighbouring kingdoms. Their hilltop settlements overlooked important mountain routes linking the Mediterranean coast with the interior of Anatolia. Control of these passes brought both security and prosperity. Everything changed after the arrival of Alexander the Great. The city gradually became part of the Hellenistic world, before eventually flourishing under Roman rule. It was during this period that Sagalassos reached the height of its power. Magnificent public buildings transformed the mountainside. Wide stone streets climbed steadily through the city. Elegant temples overlooked spacious public squares. A massive theatre capable of seating thousands of spectators faced the valley below, offering one of the most spectacular views in the ancient world. The people of Sagalassos spared little expense. They built enormous bathhouses supplied with fresh mountain water. Decorated gateways welcomed visitors arriving from distant provinces. Marble statues filled public spaces. Everywhere, the city reflected both wealth and remarkable engineering. One of its greatest treasures still survives today, the Antonine Fountain. Built nearly 2,000 years ago, it continues to flow with fresh spring water even now. Few Roman fountains anywhere in the world still function after so many centuries. Standing before it today, visitors hear the same sound that ancient citizens once heard as they gathered beneath its towering stone facade. It is one of the rare moments when the ancient world feels surprisingly alive. Modern excavations have revealed far more than monumental architecture. Archaeologists have uncovered beautifully paved courtyards, private homes decorated with colourful mosaics, workshops where craftsmen produced fine pottery traded throughout the Roman Empire, storehouses filled with everyday objects, fragments of painted walls, coins, jewellery, and carefully carved statues buried beneath centuries of rubble. Each discovery reveals another chapter in the city's remarkable story. Some of the most spectacular discoveries came in the form of enormous marble sculptures. Earthquakes had shattered many of them into hundreds of fragments. Patient restoration allowed archaeologists to rebuild these masterpieces piece by piece. Today, the faces of Roman emperors, gods, and local benefactors once again overlook the streets where they originally stood nearly 2,000 years ago. Walking through Sagalassos today is unlike visiting many ancient ruins. The city still feels carefully planned. Stone roads connect one monument to another. Grand staircases climb the mountainside. Columns frame distant views of the surrounding valleys. Every turn reveals another reminder that this was once one of the wealthiest cities in Roman Anatolia, yet prosperity would not last forever. A series of powerful earthquakes struck the region during late antiquity. Many of the city's finest buildings suffered devastating damage. At the same time, political instability spread across the Eastern Roman Empire. Trade routes gradually shifted. The population slowly declined. Families began leaving the mountains in search of safer and more prosperous communities. Little by little, the city fell silent. Nature reclaimed what people had built. Trees grew between broken columns. Wild grasses covered the stone streets. Winter snow settled across abandoned rooftops. Each passing century buried another part of the city beneath the mountainside. By the Middle Ages, Sagalassos had almost completely vanished from memory. Only scattered ruins remained visible among the forests. Local shepherds crossed the hills without realizing they were walking through one of the greatest cities of the ancient world. It remained hidden until modern archaeology began uncovering its remarkable past. Careful excavations have revealed a city preserved with extraordinary detail, allowing historians to reconstruct daily life in one of Rome's highest provincial capitals. Today, Sagalassos stands among Turkey's greatest archaeological treasures, not because it belonged to a famous emperor, not because it concealed buried riches, but because it preserves an entire mountain city where history, architecture, and nature have remained together for nearly 2,000 years. Hidden above the clouds lies a forgotten civilization, a city shaped by stone, fed by mountain springs, and quietly protected by the very mountains that once made it so difficult to reach. the ancient palace where the first kings ruled. Hidden beneath a quiet mound in eastern Turkey lies a place that changed the course of human history. There are no towering pyramids, no magnificent marble temples, no legendary palaces still standing above the ground. Instead, a grassy hill, layers of buried cities, ancient walls hidden beneath the earth, and the remains of one of the world's earliest centres of political power. For thousands of years, the mound revealed almost nothing of what lay below. Yet beneath its surface rested a forgotten city, where some of humanity's earliest rulers once governed their people. Today, archaeologists know this remarkable place as Arslantepe. Recognised as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, it preserves one of the oldest known palace complexes ever discovered, and offers a rare glimpse into the birth of organised government. Arslantepe stands near the modern city of Malatya, where the wide plains of eastern Anatolia meet the distant mountains. The surrounding landscape is fertile, rivers flow through broad valleys, fields stretch toward the horizon. For thousands of years, these rich lands attracted farmers, merchants, and growing communities, making the region an ideal place for one of the world's earliest urban settlements. People first settled here more than 6,000 years ago. Generation after generation continued building upon the same mound. Old houses were abandoned, new ones rose above them. Temples replaced villages, public buildings replaced temples. Century after century, the settlement slowly grew higher until it formed the great archaeological mound visible today. Every layer preserves another chapter of human history. Everything changed during the 4th millennium BC. Instead of a simple farming village, Arslantepe began transforming into something far more complex. A monumental mud brick palace appeared at the centre of the settlement. Its walls enclosed large courtyards, reception halls, storerooms, administrative rooms. Long corridors connected different sections of the complex, creating one of the earliest known examples of carefully planned public architecture. This was not simply the home of a wealthy family, it was the centre of political authority. Inside the palace, archaeologists uncovered remarkable evidence of organised administration. Hundreds of clay seal impressions once secured storerooms filled with grain, oil, and valuable supplies. Officials carefully recorded goods entering and leaving the palace. Everything suggests that resources were collected, stored, and distributed under centralised control. Long before written history fully developed, systems of government were already taking shape here. One discovery surprised archaeologists more than almost any other. Hidden inside one of the palace rooms was a collection of beautifully crafted bronze swords. Dating to around 5,000 years ago, they're among the oldest known swords ever discovered. Unlike simple knives or farming tools, these weapons appear to have been designed specifically for combat. Their presence hints at a society where organised power was increasingly defended by military force. The palace itself reflects that changing world. Rather than serving only religious purposes, it became the centre of administration, economy, and political control. Some historians believe Arslantepe represents one of the earliest examples of a true state society, where rulers governed through organised institutions instead of loose tribal traditions. If that interpretation is correct, the foundations of government familiar today were already beginning to emerge on this quiet Anatolian plain. Yet the city's story was far from peaceful. Excavations reveal periods of destruction followed by rebuilding. Fires swept through sections of the palace. New rulers altered the city's layout. Different cultures arrived over the centuries, each leaving its own mark upon the mound while preserving parts of what had come before. Rather than disappearing, Arslantepe continually reinvented itself. The surrounding landscape helped support this remarkable continuity. Fertile farmland produced abundant harvests. Nearby rivers supplied fresh water. Trade routes connected eastern Anatolia with Mesopotamia, the Caucasus, and the wider Near East. Ideas, materials, and technologies flowed through the settlement, allowing it to prosper for thousands of years. Modern excavations continue revealing extraordinary discoveries beneath the mound. Colourful wall paintings still decorate sections of the ancient palace. Mud brick walls remain standing after thousands of years. Ceremonial spaces, storage rooms, and administrative buildings offer an unusually complete picture of one of humanity's earliest centres of organised rule. Each season of excavation uncovers another piece of a story that reaches back to the dawn of civilization. Today, Aslan Tepe stands as one of Turkey's greatest archaeological treasures. Not because it belonged to a famous empire, not because of buried gold, but because it preserves one of the earliest places where government, administration, and royal authority began taking shape. Hidden beneath a quiet hill lies an ancient palace, a city built layer upon layer across thousands of years, and one of the remarkable places where the first chapters of organised civilization were written, the desert citadel that guarded a forgotten civilization. Hidden within the endless deserts of Central Asia lies the remains of a city that almost vanished without a trace. There are no towering pyramids, no magnificent marble temples, no famous kings whose names appear in history books. Instead, a lonely mound rising above the sands, ancient mud brick walls, forgotten temples, and the ruins of a civilization that flourished thousands of years before the Persian Empire. For centuries, shifting desert sands concealed nearly everything. The city disappeared from memory, its people were forgotten, its story remained buried beneath the Karakum Desert. Today, archaeologists know this extraordinary place as Gonur Tepe, and it has become one of the most important archaeological discoveries ever made in Central Asia. Gonur Tepe lies in modern-day Turkmenistan within the ancient Murgab River delta. Today, the landscape appears dry and almost lifeless. The desert stretches toward the horizon in every direction. Dust storms sweep across the plains. Scattered shrubs struggle to survive beneath the relentless sun. Yet thousands of years ago, this region looked completely different. Flowing rivers crossed the land, rich farmland surrounded growing settlements. Life flourished where water transformed the desert into a fertile oasis. Around 4,000 years ago, Gonur Tepe became the largest city of what archaeologists now call the Bactria-Margiana archaeological complex, sometimes described as one of the great forgotten civilizations of the Bronze Age. While Egypt raised pyramids and Mesopotamia built its first cities, another advanced society was quietly developing here in the heart of Central Asia. At the centre of Gonur Tepe stood an enormous fortified complex. Thick mud brick walls surrounded the city. Powerful gates controlled access to the interior. Watchtowers overlooked the surrounding plain. Rather than a simple settlement, the city appears to have been carefully planned from the very beginning. Its builders understood architecture, engineering, and urban design on an impressive scale. Inside the walls, archaeologists uncovered an extraordinary collection of buildings: large ceremonial halls, residential neighbourhoods, workshops, storehouses, temples connected by carefully planned streets. Every excavation revealed another piece of a thriving city that had remained hidden beneath the desert for thousands of years. One discovery surprised researchers more than almost any other. Several temple complexes contained carefully constructed fire altars. Nearby were basins connected to ancient water rituals. These discoveries led some scholars to wonder whether Gonur Tepe preserves some of the earliest evidence of religious traditions that would later influence Zoroastrianism. Although the connection remains debated, the ceremonial architecture suggests that religion played a central role in daily life. The city also reveals a remarkable level of craftsmanship. Excavations uncovered beautifully carved seals, bronze weapons, stone vessels, delicate jewellery fashioned from gold, silver and precious gemstones carried from distant regions. These discoveries demonstrate that Gonur Tepe was far from isolated. Trade routes linked the oasis with Mesopotamia, the Iranian Plateau, the Indus Valley, and lands stretching deep into Central Asia. Ideas travelled alongside merchants. So did technology, art, and culture. One of the greatest mysteries surrounding the city is its sudden disappearance. There is little evidence of a massive invasion. No single catastrophe explains its abandonment. Instead, many archaeologists believe the changing rivers gradually transformed the landscape. As water shifted away from the oasis, fertile farmland disappeared. Without reliable water, even the greatest desert city could not survive. Little by little, the population left. Homes stood empty. Temples fell silent. Wind carried sand across abandoned streets until the city vanished beneath the desert itself. For more than 3,000 years, Gonur Tepe remained almost completely forgotten. Only low mounds interrupted the flat desert landscape. Few imagined that an entire Bronze Age civilization rested beneath their feet. Modern excavations have transformed that understanding. Year after year, Archaeologists continue uncovering new temples, fortifications, workshops, and royal buildings, revealing a civilization far more advanced than anyone once believed. Every season brings new discoveries that reshape our understanding of the ancient world. Today, Gonur Tepe stands among the greatest archaeological treasures of Central Asia, not because it belonged to a famous empire, not because of legendary conquerors, but because it preserves the remarkable story of a forgotten civilization that turned a desert oasis into one of the ancient world's most sophisticated cities. Hidden beneath the sands lies a lost citadel, a city built beside vanished rivers, a civilization erased by time, and one of archaeology's most extraordinary rediscoveries. The forgotten sacred fortress of the Aravalli Hills. Hidden high among the rugged Aravalli Mountains stands a fortress unlike any other in India. There are no crowded royal palaces, no glittering treasures, no armies marching across its massive walls. Instead, hundreds of ancient temples, silent courtyards, weathered stone shrines, and sacred pathways that wind through one of the largest fortresses ever built. For centuries, pilgrims, rulers, and wandering monks passed through these mountains. Yet many visitors remember the fortress for its enormous walls while overlooking the remarkable sanctuary hidden within them. Today, this extraordinary place is known as the Kumbhalgarh Temples, a forgotten collection of sacred monuments preserved inside one of India's greatest hill forts. Kumbhalgarh rises above the forests of Rajasthan, surrounded by steep ridges and deep valleys. The landscape feels wild and timeless. Rocky hills stretch toward the horizon, dense woodland covers the mountain slopes. Morning mist often drifts through the valleys before disappearing beneath the desert sun. It is easy to understand why this remote location was chosen centuries ago. Nature itself became part of the fortress's defences. Construction of Kumbhalgarh Fort began during the 15th century under the Rajput ruler Rana Kumbha. Its enormous defensive walls eventually stretched for more than 30 kilometres, making them among the longest continuous fortifications ever built. Hidden behind those mighty walls, however, lies a very different story. Scattered throughout the fortress are more than 300 temples. Some are dedicated to Hindu deities, others belong to the Jain tradition. Together they transform the mountain stronghold into both a military fortress and a sacred landscape where worship continued alongside daily life. Walking through the complex today feels less like exploring a fortress and more like discovering a forgotten city of temples. Small stone shrines appear around quiet corners. Decorated pillars support ancient mandapas. Carved entrances lead into peaceful sanctuaries where prayers were once offered beneath flickering oil lamps. Many of the temples remain remarkably well preserved despite centuries of wind, rain, and changing kingdoms. One of the most impressive is the Nilkanth Mahadev temple. Built from beautifully carved stone, it houses an enormous Shiva lingam that continues to attract pilgrims even today. Unlike many abandoned archaeological sites, parts of Kumbhalgarh remain living places of worship, connecting the modern world with traditions that have survived for hundreds of years. The temples also reveal the remarkable craftsmanship of their builders. Stone ceilings are covered with delicate floral carvings. Columns display finely sculpted figures of gods, guardians, dancers, and mythical beings. Every surface reflects extraordinary attention to detail. Even the smallest shrine was carefully designed, suggesting that devotion mattered as much as grandeur. The coexistence of Hindu and Jain temples inside the same fortified city also tells an important story. Rather than serving only one community, Kumbhalgarh became a place where different religious traditions flourished side by side. The fortress protected not only soldiers and rulers, but also monks, pilgrims, and sacred institutions that shaped everyday life across the region. Yet like many great strongholds, Kumbhalgarh eventually witnessed changing fortunes. Power shifted between kingdoms, new rulers emerged, trade routes evolved. Although the fortress remained important for centuries, many of its smaller temples gradually fell into silence. Stone pathways became overgrown, courtyards emptied. The surrounding forest slowly reclaimed sections of the ancient sanctuary, while the great defensive walls continued standing above the hills. Modern conservation has revealed just how remarkable this sacred landscape truly is. Archaeologists continue documenting forgotten shrines, restoring damaged carvings, and preserving monuments that had almost disappeared beneath vegetation. Each restored temple offers another glimpse into a mountain sanctuary where faith and architecture existed together within one of India's greatest fortresses. Today, Kumbhalgarh is recognized as a UNESCO World Heritage Site and one of Rajasthan's greatest historical treasures, not simply because of its mighty walls, not because of its famous rulers, but because hidden within the fortress survives one of the largest collections of historic temples anywhere in India. High above the Aravalli Hills lies a forgotten sanctuary, a fortress built to withstand armies, a sacred city shaped by devotion, and one of India's most remarkable landscapes where history and faith have stood together for centuries. The desert shrine beneath the copper cliffs. Hidden among the towering red cliffs of southern Israel stands a sanctuary that has watched over the desert for more than 3,000 years. There are no great cities surrounding it, no magnificent palaces, no sprawling kingdoms stretching across the horizon. Instead, a small stone temple, ancient altars, weathered carvings, and a sacred place built beneath cliffs rich with copper that once attracted miners from across the ancient world. For centuries the desert protected its secrets. Empires rose and disappeared, trade routes shifted, the temple slowly fell silent beneath drifting sand and broken stone. Today, archaeologists know this remarkable place as the Temple of Hathor at Timnah, and although it appears modest beside the great temples of Egypt, it remains one of the most fascinating religious sites ever discovered in the ancient desert. The sanctuary lies within the Timnah Valley, a landscape unlike almost anywhere else in the Middle East. Towering sandstone cliffs rise above the valley floor. Strange rock formations glow deep shades of red and orange beneath the desert sun. Dry riverbeds weave between the mountains. Almost nothing interrupts the silence except the wind passing through the narrow canyons. It is difficult to imagine that this remote valley once echoed with the sounds of miners, craftsmen, traders, and priests. For thousands of years, Timnah was one of the ancient world's richest sources of copper. Long before iron became common, copper was among humanity's most valuable metals. It was used to make tools, weapons, jewelry, ceremonial objects. Communities from across the ancient Near East came here to extract the precious ore hidden within the surrounding cliffs. Where miners gathered, religion soon followed. During the Late Bronze Age, Egyptian expeditions established a small sanctuary beneath the cliffs and dedicated it to Hathor, the Egyptian goddess associated with mining, protection, music, and motherhood. The temple was never intended to rival the great monuments along the Nile. Instead, it served the workers who spent months living far from home in one of the harshest environments imaginable. Before entering the dangerous mines, they likely came here seeking protection. Offerings were placed upon stone altars. Incense filled the air. Prayers echoed beneath the towering cliffs as priests carried out ceremonies beneath the desert sky. Even in such an isolated place, faith remained an essential part of daily life. Excavations have uncovered remarkable traces of those ancient rituals. Stone altars still stand within the sanctuary. Fragments of Egyptian statues have been recovered from the site. Decorated pottery, jewelry, scarabs, and beautifully carved inscriptions all reveal the strong Egyptian presence that once reached deep into the Arabian desert. Yet the temple's story did not end with Egypt. After Egyptian control faded, local Midianite communities adapted the sanctuary for their own traditions. Rather than abandoning it, they transformed the sacred space. New objects appeared, different styles of worship emerged. The same temple continued serving new generations, each leaving behind evidence of changing beliefs while preserving the importance of the site itself. This remarkable transition makes Timnah unique among ancient religious sites. Instead of disappearing when one civilization declined, the sanctuary evolved alongside the people who inherited it. Its walls quietly recorded centuries of cultural change without ever losing their sacred purpose. The surrounding valley adds another layer to its mystery. Enormous copper mines surround the temple. Ancient shafts disappear into the mountains. Stone tools still lie scattered across the desert floor. Massive slag heaps remain where ore was smelted thousands of years ago. Together they reveal an industrial landscape unlike almost any other from the Bronze Age. Religion and industry existed side by side. The temple watched over both. Eventually, however, mining declined. The expeditions ended. Workers left the valley. The sanctuary slowly fell into silence as drifting sand buried much of its ancient walls. For centuries, the desert became its only guardian. Modern archaeology has gradually uncovered the forgotten shrine once again. Each excavation has revealed new evidence of daily life, religious ceremonies, and international trade in one of the ancient world's most important mining regions. Every discovery reminds us that even the most remote places could become centres of remarkable human activity. Today, the Temple of Hathor remains one of Timna's greatest archaeological treasures, not because of its enormous size, not because of famous kings, but because it preserves the story of a sacred sanctuary where miners, priests and travellers gathered beneath towering copper cliffs more than 3,000 years ago. Hidden within the desert stands a forgotten shrine, a temple carved beneath the mountains, a place where faith, industry and survival came together in one of the ancient world's most extraordinary landscapes. The Giants Without a Name. Hidden among the tropical lowlands of southern Mexico stand faces unlike any other in the ancient world. There are no towering pyramids, no magnificent palaces, no written inscriptions telling their story. Instead, gigantic stone heads, calm expressions, massive helmets carved into solid rock, and silent faces that have watched over the jungle for nearly 3,000 years. No one knows whose faces they truly represent. No one knows exactly why they were carved. Yet they remain among the greatest masterpieces ever created in the ancient Americas. Today, these remarkable monuments are known as the colossal heads of La Venta, one of the greatest legacies of the mysterious Olmec civilization. La Venta lies in the humid lowlands of the Mexican state of Tabasco, where dense forests, winding rivers, and fertile wetlands stretch across the landscape. Today, much of the ancient city has disappeared beneath centuries of vegetation and shifting soil. At first glance, very little hints that this quiet region once served as the ceremonial heart of one of Mesoamerica's earliest great civilizations. Long before the Maya built their magnificent cities, long before the Aztecs ruled central Mexico, the Olmec were already creating monumental architecture, complex ceremonial centers, and extraordinary works of art that would influence countless cultures for centuries to come. La Venta became one of their greatest cities. Large earthen pyramids dominated the ceremonial center. Broad plazas welcomed gatherings of priests and rulers. Stone monuments lined carefully planned avenues. Everything reflected a society capable of organizing enormous construction projects despite possessing neither metal tools nor wheeled vehicles. Among all these discoveries, however, nothing captures the imagination quite like the colossal heads. Some stand nearly 3 meters tall, several weigh more than 20 tons. Each was carved from a single block of volcanic basalt, transported from the distant Tuxtla Mountains, nearly 100 kilometers away. Exactly how the Olmec moved stones of such enormous size across rivers, swamps and forests remains one of the site's greatest mysteries. Without horses, without carts, without iron, the achievement seems almost unbelievable. Even more remarkable is the individuality of every sculpture. No two heads are identical. Each displays different facial features, different expressions, different proportions. Some appear stern, others almost thoughtful. The carefully carved helmets worn by every figure suggest they may represent powerful rulers, elite warriors, or participants in sacred ceremonies. Yet without written records, their true identities remain unknown. Archaeologists believe the heads were probably portraits of important leaders, rather than gods or mythical beings. If that is true, they preserve the faces of people whose names disappeared thousands of years ago, while their likenesses survived. It is one of archaeology's greatest ironies. The faces remain, the identities do not. Excavations throughout La Venta have revealed that the city was far more than a collection of giant sculptures. Hidden beneath its plazas were carefully arranged offerings made from polished jade, colourful serpentine stone, and hundreds of carefully placed blocks forming intricate ceremonial mosaics. Massive stone altars, columns carved with mysterious figures, and sophisticated drainage systems demonstrate that the Olmec possessed remarkable engineering abilities long before many other civilizations of the region. Religion appears to have shaped every part of life. Many monuments depict rulers emerging from caves, interacting with supernatural beings, or standing beside powerful jaguars, animals that held deep symbolic importance throughout Olmec belief. These carvings hint at a spiritual world where kings, nature, and the divine were closely connected. Yet much of that belief system has vanished, leaving archaeologists to reconstruct its meaning from stone alone. Around 400 years before the Common Era, La Venta gradually declined. The reasons remain uncertain. Environmental changes may have altered the surrounding rivers. Political struggles may have weakened the city. Trade networks shifted. Little by little, the ceremonial centre fell silent. The jungle slowly reclaimed the plazas. Trees grew around the monuments. Soil buried much of the ancient city until only scattered traces remained visible above the landscape. Modern archaeology has gradually uncovered its remarkable past. Each excavation reveals another monument, another offering, another carefully planned structure that deepens our understanding of the Olmec world. Yet the colossal heads continue to attract the greatest fascination. They remain unlike anything else ever created in the ancient Americas. Today, the heads of La Venta stand among Mexico's greatest archaeological treasures. Not because they belong to famous emperors, not because they guard hidden riches, but because they preserve the silent faces of a civilization that helped shape the history of Mesoamerica long before written history began. Hidden beneath the jungle stand giants without names, monuments carved from living stone, watching over a forgotten city and guarding one of archaeology's most enduring mysteries, a stone village that existed before history. Hidden on the sunlit hills of Cyprus lies a village older than kingdoms, older than pyramids, and older than written history itself. There are no towering temples, no mighty fortresses, no royal tombs filled with gold. Instead, round stone houses, narrow pathways, ancient hearths, and the quiet remains of one of humanity's earliest farming communities. For thousands of years, the village rested beneath layers of earth and forgotten time. Its people left behind no written language, no famous rulers, no legends preserved in ancient books, yet the stones they carefully placed still tell the story of a remarkable chapter in human history. Today, archaeologists know this extraordinary place as Quiroquita, one of the oldest and best preserved prehistoric settlements anywhere in the eastern Mediterranean. Perched above the Moroni River in southern Cyprus, Quiroquita occupies a gentle hillside overlooking fertile valleys and distant mountains. The surrounding landscape is peaceful. Olive trees cover the slopes. Wild grasses move with the wind. Small streams flow through the countryside during the wetter months. It is difficult to imagine that more than 9,000 years ago, this quiet hill was already home to a thriving community. Long before cities appeared across Europe, long before the first pharaoh ruled Egypt, families were already building permanent homes here, marking one of the earliest chapters of settled human life. The people of Quiroquita no longer depended entirely on hunting and gathering. They cultivated crops, raised animals, stored food for the future. Generation after generation, they transformed the hillside into a carefully planned village where daily life followed the changing seasons. One of the settlement's most remarkable features is its unusual architecture. Nearly every home was circular. Built from carefully stacked limestone blocks, the houses featured thick stone walls supporting roofs made from timber, reeds, and mud. Inside, raised platforms served as sleeping areas. Stone hearths provided warmth and a place for cooking. Small storage spaces protected precious food supplies from both weather and animals. Although simple in appearance, the buildings reveal impressive planning and remarkable craftsmanship. Walking through Quiroquita today feels very different from visiting later ancient cities. The narrow passages curve gently between clusters of houses. Low stone walls divide one household from another. Every structure seems designed to fit naturally into the hillside rather than dominate it. The village grew gradually over centuries, each generation building upon the work of those who came before. Archaeologists have discovered that the settlement was surrounded by an impressive stone wall. For such an early community, this was an extraordinary achievement. The wall may have helped protect the village from wild animals. It may have marked the limits of the settlement, or perhaps it served as a defense during times of conflict. Without written records, its true purpose remains uncertain. The people themselves also left behind fascinating clues about their beliefs. Excavations revealed that many family members were buried beneath the floors of their own homes. Rather than creating large cemeteries outside the village, they chose to keep their ancestors close. Generation after generation lived above those who had come before, creating a powerful connection between the living and the dead. Exactly what these burial traditions meant remains one of Quiroquita's greatest mysteries. The discoveries extend far beyond the houses. Stone tools, grinding stones, bone needles, decorative beads crafted from shells and imported materials all reveal a community that was both skilled and surprisingly connected to the wider world. Although isolated on an island, the people of Kirikitia were not completely alone. Evidence suggests they maintained contact with neighbouring communities across the eastern Mediterranean, exchanging ideas, materials and traditions long before the development of great civilizations. Then, after flourishing for well over 1,000 years, the village was abandoned. No evidence points to a single catastrophic disaster. There was no great fire, no massive earthquake. Instead, the people simply left. Why they abandoned one of the region's oldest settlements remains uncertain. Changing environmental conditions, shifting resources, or the gradual movement of communities to new locations may all have played a role. The answers disappeared with the people themselves. For thousands of years, wind carried soil across the empty houses. Walls slowly collapsed. Grass covered the ancient streets. The hillside quietly reclaimed the village until almost nothing remained visible above the ground. Modern archaeology has gradually uncovered its remarkable past, revealing one of the world's most complete prehistoric settlements. Today, Kirikitia stands as a UNESCO World Heritage Site and one of Cyprus's greatest archaeological treasures. Not because of powerful kings, not because of magnificent monuments, but because it preserves the story of ordinary people who helped shape the earliest foundations of settled human life. Hidden beneath a peaceful hillside lies a village before history, a community built from stone, a world without writing, and one of humanity's oldest surviving neighbourhoods where the first chapters of civilization quietly began. The Forgotten Stone Warriors of Corsica. Hidden among the rolling hills of southern Corsica stands one of Europe's oldest and most mysterious archaeological landscapes. There are no towering castles, no magnificent cathedrals, no grand cities stretching across the countryside. Instead, silent stone warriors, ancient standing monuments, weathered carvings, and a forgotten sanctuary where enormous human figures have watched over the island for thousands of years. Long before written history reached these shores, someone carefully shaped giant blocks of granite into monuments unlike anything else in the Mediterranean. Their names have vanished, their language has been lost, but the stone figures remain. Today, archaeologists know this remarkable place as Filitosa, one of Corsica's greatest prehistoric treasures and home to some of Europe's most extraordinary statue menhirs. Filitosa lies in the peaceful Taravo Valley of southern Corsica, surrounded by gentle hills, olive groves and forests of evergreen oak. The landscape feels timeless. Granite boulders rise naturally from the earth. Small rivers wind quietly through the countryside. Warm Mediterranean sunlight falls across fields that have changed remarkably little over thousands of years. At first glance, nothing suggests that one of Europe's oldest ceremonial landscapes lies hidden among these quiet hills. People first settled this region more than 6,000 years ago. Over countless generations, communities built homes, raised livestock, cultivated crops, and gradually transformed the surrounding landscape. Then, sometime during the Bronze Age, something extraordinary began to appear. Massive standing stones, unlike any ordinary monument. Carefully carved into their surfaces were human faces, large eyes, long noses, strong chins. Some even displayed swords, daggers, belts, and armour carved directly into the granite. Rather than simple memorial stones, they appeared to represent powerful individuals standing guard across the landscape. Each statue possesses its own unique character. No two are exactly alike. Some stand over 2 meters tall. Others are smaller, but equally detailed. Many appear calm and expressionless. Others seem almost watchful. Even after thousands of years of weathering, their faces still carry an unmistakable human presence that continues to fascinate visitors today. Exactly who these figures represent remains one of Filitosa's greatest mysteries. Some archaeologists believe they portray powerful tribal leaders remembered after death. Others suggest they honour legendary warriors who defended their communities during times of conflict. Another theory proposes they represent protective spirits placed around sacred ceremonial spaces. Without written records, none of these ideas can be confirmed with certainty. The stones continue guarding their secrets in complete silence. Excavations have revealed that Filitosa was far more than a collection of standing monuments. Archaeologists uncovered the remains of circular stone structures, defensive walls, ceremonial platforms, and ancient dwellings spread across the hillside. Together they reveal a thriving prehistoric settlement, whose people possessed remarkable knowledge of construction and stone carving. The sanctuary evolved over many centuries as new generations reshaped the landscape while preserving the importance of the site. One of the most intriguing discoveries involves the relationship between different cultures that occupied the valley. Some statue menhirs appear to have been deliberately broken before being reused in later monuments. Others were carefully buried beneath new structures. These discoveries suggest periods of conflict, cultural change, or shifting religious traditions that transformed Filitosa over hundreds of years. Rather than remaining unchanged, the sanctuary constantly evolved alongside the people who lived there. The surrounding landscape adds another layer to its mystery. From the hilltop, broad views stretch across fertile valleys toward distant mountains. Large granite outcrops dominate the countryside. Many archaeologists believe the builders deliberately selected this location because of both its natural beauty and its strategic position, overlooking important routes through southern Corsica. Standing among the statues today, it is easy to imagine ceremonies taking place beneath the open sky while the stone guardians silently watched from every direction. Eventually, however, the people who created Filitosa disappeared into history. New cultures arrived on the island. Ancient beliefs faded. The sanctuary gradually fell into silence. Grass covered the stone foundations. Trees surrounded the standing figures. For centuries, the forgotten warriors remained hidden among the hills, while nature quietly protected what human memory had lost. Modern archaeology has slowly uncovered the site once again, revealing one of the Mediterranean's most remarkable prehistoric sanctuaries. Each excavation has uncovered new carvings, structures, and artifacts that continue reshaping our understanding of Bronze Age Europe. Yet the greatest mystery remains unchanged. Who were the silent faces carved into stone? And why did an entire civilization choose to remember its people in such extraordinary monuments? Today, Filitosa stands among Europe's greatest archaeological treasures, not because of magnificent palaces, not because of buried riches, but because it preserves the stone guardians of a forgotten world. Hidden among the hills of Corsica stands a sanctuary unlike any other, a place where ancient warriors still watch in silence, and where one of Europe's oldest civilizations continues to speak through stone alone, the impossible stone blocks of Siberia. Hidden deep within the remote mountains of southern Siberia lies a place that has sparked debate for decades. There are no ancient temples, no forgotten cities, no carved monuments bearing the names of kings. Instead, enormous granite blocks, towering stone walls, perfectly balanced slabs, and rock formations so massive that they seem almost impossible to explain. To some, they are simply the work of nature. To others, they represent one of archaeology's greatest unsolved mysteries. Today, these remarkable formations are known as the Mount Shoria megaliths, hidden within the rugged mountains of Russia's Gornaya Shoria region. Far from modern cities, the landscape is wild and unforgiving. Dense forests blanket the mountains. Fast-flowing rivers cut through deep valleys. Winter snow covers the peaks for much of the year. Even reaching the site requires a difficult journey across rough terrain, making it one of the most isolated megalithic locations ever photographed. At first glance, the formations appear almost unbelievable. Gigantic rectangular blocks of granite seem stacked one upon another with astonishing precision. Some stretch several meters in length. Others rise high above the surrounding forest like the walls of a forgotten fortress. The larger stones have been estimated by some researchers to weigh hundreds, or even thousands, of tons, making them among the biggest stone formations ever associated with megalithic speculation. Standing beneath them, the sheer scale is difficult to comprehend. The blocks appear unusually straight. Some corners look remarkably sharp. Long horizontal lines separate one section from another, creating the impression of enormous masonry rather than natural cliffs. From certain angles, the mountainside resembles the ruins of a gigantic stone citadel hidden deep within the Siberian wilderness. It is this appearance that has fueled decades of fascination. Some visitors have suggested the formations are the remains of an unknown prehistoric civilization capable of moving stones on an unimaginable scale. Others believe they could preserve evidence of an ancient culture lost long before recorded history. Photographs of the site have circulated around the world, inspiring countless theories about forgotten builders and vanished civilizations. Most geologists, however, offer a very different explanation. They argue that the formations are the result of millions of years of natural geological processes. Granite develops systems of fractures as it cools beneath the Earth's surface. Over immense periods of time, ice, water, wind, and changing temperatures slowly widen those cracks. Eventually, enormous blocks separate from one another, creating surprisingly regular shapes that can resemble walls built by human hands. It is a process known as jointing, and similar formations appear in several parts of the world. Yet even among geologists, Mount Shoria continues to attract attention because of the extraordinary size of its fractured blocks. Few natural formations produce such enormous stone masses arranged in ways that appear so strikingly architectural. The debate therefore remains focused not on whether the rocks are real, but on how unusual the geological processes may have been. Adding to the mystery are reports of unusual magnetic readings recorded by some visitors. Although no scientific consensus links these observations to the stone formations themselves, they have contributed to the site's growing reputation as one of Siberia's most enigmatic landscapes. Its remote location only strengthens the sense of mystery. Unlike famous archaeological sites visited by millions each year, Mount Shoria remains largely untouched. No visitor centres, no reconstructed monuments, no crowds walking between the stones, only forests, mountains, and enormous granite blocks rising silently above the trees. Whether viewed as an extraordinary geological wonder or as one of the world's most intriguing megalithic mysteries, the site continues to challenge expectations. It reminds us that nature itself can create landscapes that appear almost impossible, blurring the line between geology and archaeology in ways that continue to inspire curiosity. Today, the Mount Shoria megaliths remain one of Siberia's most fascinating and debated landmarks. Not because historians have solved their mystery, not because archaeologists have proven they were built by ancient hands, but because they remind us how easily the natural world can produce questions that science is still working to answer. Hidden among the mountains of Siberia stand impossible stone blocks, a landscape shaped by immense forces, a mystery balanced between geology and legend, and one of the most extraordinary places where nature challenges the limits of human imagination. The hidden paintings of the Silk Road. Hidden within the desert cliffs of western China lies a forgotten sanctuary where ancient artists transformed bare stone into one of the world's greatest galleries. There are no towering pyramids, no magnificent palaces, no royal tombs filled with gold. Instead, hundreds of cave temples, walls covered with colourful paintings, silent meditation chambers, and thousands of images that have survived for more than 15 centuries. For generations, merchants and monks passed these cliffs without knowing that one of Asia's greatest artistic treasures rested quietly within the mountain. Today, archaeologists know this remarkable place as the Kizil Caves, one of the oldest Buddhist cave temple complexes along the ancient Silk Road. The caves lie near the northern edge of the Taklamakan Desert in China's Xinjiang region, where towering sandstone cliffs rise above dry river valleys and distant mountains. The landscape is both beautiful and unforgiving. Harsh desert winds sweep across the valley. Summer heat can become overwhelming. Winters are bitterly cold. Yet for centuries, this remote frontier became one of the most important meeting places between East and West. Long before the famous cave temples of Dunhuang were created, Buddhist monks had already begun carving sanctuaries into these cliffs. Construction is believed to have started during the 3rd century, when traders, pilgrims, and travellers carried new religious ideas across the Silk Road. As Buddhism spread through Central Asia, the quiet cliffs of Kizil gradually filled with temples, shrines, and meditation chambers carved directly into the soft rock. Eventually, more than 200 caves covered the mountainside. Each served a different purpose. Some were designed for prayer, others for meditation. Some functioned as assembly halls where monks gathered to study sacred teachings. Walking through the complex today feels like entering a hidden monastery frozen in time. Narrow passages connect one chamber to another. Small windows allow sunlight to fall across painted walls. Every cave reveals another masterpiece hidden beneath centuries of dust. The paintings themselves are among the site's greatest treasures. Brilliant shades of red, blue, green, and gold still cover many ceilings and walls despite the passing of more than 1,000 years. Artists filled the caves with scenes from the life of the Buddha, heavenly musicians, kings, merchants, monks, and travellers moving across distant lands. Unlike many ancient monuments, these paintings were never intended simply as decoration. They served as visual lessons for pilgrims, helping tell sacred stories in a world where few people could read. One of the most remarkable features of the artwork is the extraordinary mixture of artistic traditions. Greek-inspired figures appear beside Indian Buddhist imagery. Persian decorative patterns surround Chinese artistic techniques. Every painting reflects the remarkable cultural exchange made possible by the Silk Road. Rather than belonging to one civilization alone, Kizil became a meeting place where ideas from across Asia blended together into something entirely unique. Archaeologists have also discovered inscriptions written in several ancient languages. These writings reveal that visitors arrived from distant kingdoms stretching across Central Asia. Merchants carrying silk, spices, precious stones, and exotic goods often travelled the same roads as monks and scholars. The caves became far more than religious sanctuaries. They became places where cultures met, exchanged knowledge, and shaped one another for centuries. Yet the sanctuary did not remain untouched forever. As trade routes gradually changed, fewer travellers passed through the region. Some caves were abandoned, earthquakes damaged sections of the cliffs. Wind and drifting sand slowly buried entrances. Centuries later, explorers from Europe and Asia removed many paintings and manuscripts, carrying them to museums far from the desert where they had been created. Even so, much of the remarkable artwork still survives. Modern conservation continues protecting what remains of this extraordinary treasure. Each restored painting offers another glimpse into a forgotten world where religion, commerce, and art flourish together at the crossroads of civilizations. The caves remain one of the oldest surviving Buddhist artistic centers anywhere in China. Today, the Kizil Caves stand among Asia's greatest archaeological treasures, not because they belong to mighty emperors, not because they guarded hidden riches, but because they preserve one of the earliest chapters of Buddhist art as it spread across the Silk Road. Hidden within the desert cliffs lies a forgotten sanctuary, a gallery carved into stone, a meeting place of civilizations, and one of the ancient world's most remarkable collections of paintings, quietly watching over the Silk Road for more than 1,500 years. The mountain sanctuary where ancient rituals touched the sky. Hidden among the towering Andes of southern Peru lies a forgotten sanctuary built where mountains meet the clouds. There are no glittering palaces, no enormous pyramids, no royal cities stretching across the valleys. Instead, stone terraces, ancient stairways, ceremonial platforms, and a mountaintop sanctuary where people gathered centuries before the rise of the Inca Empire. For generations, the mountain watched in silence. Wind swept across its summit. Clouds drifted through its stone walls. The people who once climbed these sacred terraces slowly disappeared into history, yet the sanctuary remained. Today, archaeologists know this remarkable place as Sondor, one of Peru's most fascinating pre-Inca ceremonial centers and a monument to the Chanca civilization. Sondor rises above the fertile valleys of the Apurimac region, where rugged mountains dominate every direction. The surrounding landscape is breathtaking. Steep cliffs fall into deep river valleys. Snow-covered peaks appear on the distant horizon. Wild grasses cover the hillsides while cold mountain winds move constantly across the summit. Even today, reaching the sanctuary requires a steady climb through the highlands. It is easy to understand why ancient people believed this mountain stood closer to the heavens than the world below. Long before the Inca expanded across the Andes, the Chanca people established powerful communities throughout this region. They became known as skilled warriors and builders, creating settlements across the mountains while developing religious traditions closely connected to the surrounding landscape. Among all their ceremonial sites, Sondor became one of the most important. At the centre of the sanctuary stands an enormous stepped platform rising above the hillside. Broad stone stairways climb toward its highest terrace. From the summit, sweeping views stretch across the surrounding valleys for many kilometres. Nothing blocks the horizon, only mountains, sky, and silence. Many archaeologists believe this elevated platform served as the heart of ceremonial gatherings, where priests and community leaders carried out rituals connected to agriculture, seasonal change, and the worship of mountain spirits. In Andean belief, mountains were far more than natural landmarks. They were living beings, powerful guardians believed to control rainfall, fertile land, and the well-being of entire communities. Building a sanctuary high above the valleys may have brought worshippers symbolically closer to these sacred forces. Every carefully placed stone reflected that relationship between people and the landscape around them. Walking through Sondor today reveals a remarkably planned ceremonial complex. Stone terraces follow the natural contours of the mountain. Small plazas open between ancient walls. Narrow staircases connect one level to another. Rather than reshaping the mountain completely, the builders carefully adapted their architecture to the terrain, allowing the sanctuary to appear almost as though it had grown naturally from the hillside itself. Excavations have uncovered finely crafted stonework, ceremonial spaces, and evidence that large gatherings once took place here. Although many of the structures are simple compared with later Inca monuments, they demonstrate remarkable engineering and careful planning. Every terrace, every retaining wall, every staircase reflects generations of knowledge passed from one builder to the next. The sanctuary also occupies an important place in Andean history. The Chanca people were among the greatest rivals the Inca would ever face. According to later traditions, their conflict helped shape the rise of the Inca Empire itself. Although the Chanca were eventually defeated, places like Sondor preserve the memory of a civilization that once controlled these mountains before the Inca became the dominant power of the Andes. Exactly how many ceremonies were performed here remains unknown. No written records describe the rituals. No inscriptions explain the beliefs of the priests who climbed these terraces centuries ago. Instead, the mountain itself provides the only clues. Its commanding position, its carefully aligned platforms, its sweeping views of the surrounding peaks. Together they suggest that nature itself formed part of every ceremony held upon the summit. Over time, however, the sanctuary gradually fell silent. Political power shifted. New rulers arrived. The Inca absorbed the surrounding region into their expanding empire. Ancient ceremonies slowly faded from memory. Stone walls weathered beneath centuries of mountain rain. Grasses covered abandoned terraces. The winds became the sanctuary's only remaining visitors. Modern archaeology has slowly brought Sondor back into the light. Careful conservation has revealed one of Peru's most important pre-Inca ceremonial landscapes, offering a rare opportunity to explore a sacred mountain that shaped the beliefs of an entire civilization. Today, Sondor stands as one of the Andes' most remarkable archaeological treasures, not because of hidden riches, not because of famous emperors, but because it preserves a forgotten sanctuary where ancient rituals once reached toward the sky. Hidden high above the valleys lies a sacred mountain, a sanctuary built among the clouds, and a timeless reminder that, for the people who lived here, the highest peaks were never simply mountains. They were the bridge between earth and the heavens, the forgotten city hidden inside the white cliffs. Hidden among the white limestone cliffs of Crimea lies an entire city carved directly into the living rock. There are no towering skyscrapers, no crowded marketplaces, no royal palaces rising above the landscape. Instead, hundreds of cave homes, stone churches, underground chambers, and narrow streets that disappear into the cliffs themselves. For centuries, this remarkable settlement remained protected by nature. Its towering cliffs served as walls. Its narrow entrances guarded every approach. Yet despite its strength, the city slowly faded into silence. Today, archaeologists know this extraordinary place as Eski Kerman, one of the largest and best-preserved cave cities of the Crimean Peninsula. High above the surrounding valleys, it preserves the story of a forgotten mountain community that once flourished between Europe and Asia. Eski Kerman stands upon a broad limestone plateau, overlooking fertile valleys and distant mountain ridges. The landscape is dramatic. Steep cliffs rise almost vertically from the valley floor. Dense forests cover the surrounding hills. From the top of the plateau, sweeping views stretch for miles in every direction. It is easy to understand why ancient builders chose this remarkable location. Nature had already created one of the strongest fortresses imaginable. The city is believed to have been founded during the early medieval period, probably around the 6th century. Over time it grew into a thriving settlement, where farmers, merchants, soldiers, and religious communities lived together behind the protection of the surrounding cliffs. Rather than building upward, the people of Eski Kerman carved directly into the soft limestone beneath their feet. More than 300 caves still survive today. Some served as homes, Others became storage rooms, workshops, wine cellars, chapels, and defensive positions overlooking the valleys below. Each chamber reveals another piece of everyday life in a city unlike almost any other in Europe. Walking through Eski Kerman today feels remarkably different from visiting ordinary archaeological ruins. Stone staircases descend into hidden rooms. Narrow passageways connect one level to another. Small windows carved into the cliffs frame distant mountain views. In many places, the architecture almost disappears into the landscape itself. From a distance, the city becomes nearly invisible. Only after climbing onto the plateau do its streets and buildings begin to emerge from the rock. Religion played an important role within the settlement. Several cave churches were carved directly into the limestone, their walls once covered with colourful frescoes depicting saints, crosses, and scenes from Christian tradition. Although many paintings have faded with time, traces still survive, reminding visitors that these quiet chambers once echoed with prayer and ceremony. The city also demonstrates remarkable engineering. Ancient builders carved deep cisterns to collect rainwater. Grain storage chambers helped sustain the population during difficult times. Watch posts overlooked every approach to the plateau, allowing defenders to detect approaching enemies long before they reached the cliffs. Everything about Eski Kerman reflects careful planning and an impressive understanding of the natural landscape. For several centuries the city prospered. Trade routes connected Crimea with the Byzantine Empire, the Black Sea, and the vast steppes stretching toward Eastern Europe. Merchants carried silk, wine, pottery, and metal goods through the region. The city became an important centre where cultures, religions, and trading networks met along the frontier of the medieval world. Yet, like many mountain strongholds, its fortunes eventually changed. During the late 13th century, powerful invasions swept across the region. Historical evidence suggests the city suffered heavy destruction, most likely during the Mongol campaigns that reshaped much of Eurasia. Many buildings were abandoned. The streets gradually emptied. The churches fell silent. Little by little, nature reclaimed what generations had carefully carved into the cliffs. For hundreds of years, wind and rain slowly weathered the stone. Trees spread across the plateau. Grass covered the ancient streets. Only the caves remained, quietly preserving the memory of the people who once called this extraordinary place home. Modern archaeology has revealed just how remarkable Eski Kerman truly is. Excavations continue uncovering forgotten homes, defensive structures, religious buildings, and everyday objects that offer rare insights into medieval life in the Crimean mountains. Every new discovery adds another chapter to the story of a city that seemed almost designed to disappear into the landscape. Today, Eski Kerman stands among the most remarkable cave cities of Eastern Europe, not because of hidden treasure, not because of famous kings, but because it preserves an entire community carved into living stone, where architecture and nature became almost impossible to separate. Hidden inside the white cliffs lies a forgotten city, a fortress shaped by the mountain itself, and one of the medieval world's most extraordinary places where history was carved directly into the rock. The hidden giant lost in Cambodia's jungle. Hidden deep within the forests of northern Cambodia lies a city so vast that even today it remains overshadowed by its more famous neighbour. There are no crowds filling its ancient roads, no endless lines of visitors, no towering skyline visible above the jungle. Instead, miles of stone walls, collapsed temples, silent reservoirs, and one of the largest religious complexes ever built by the Khmer Empire. For centuries the jungle swallowed almost everything. Trees wrapped themselves around fallen gateways. Roots split ancient walls. The city slowly disappeared beneath a sea of green. Today, archaeologists know this extraordinary place as Preah Khan of Kampong Svei, often called Banteay Preah Khan. And despite covering a far greater area than many ancient capitals, it remains one of Cambodia's least understood archaeological wonders. The sanctuary lies nearly 100 kilometres east of Angkor, surrounded by dense forests and fertile plains. The landscape feels remote. Tall trees stretch across the horizon. Seasonal streams weave through the countryside. During the rainy season, much of the surrounding land becomes lush and vibrant, making it difficult to imagine that one of the Khmer Empire's greatest cities rests beneath the vegetation. At first glance, the site appears almost endless. Massive laterite walls surround an enormous ceremonial complex. Broad causeways cross ancient moats. towering gateways rise above the jungle canopy. Far beyond the central temple, scattered ruins continue across the landscape, revealing that this was far more than a single monument. It was an entire sacred city. Archaeologists believe much of the complex was built during the reign of King Suryavarman I, before later rulers expanded and transformed the sanctuary over several centuries. While Angkor became the political heart of the empire, Bante Preah Khan grew into one of its most important religious and ceremonial centres. Pilgrims likely travelled great distances to reach its temples, while priests carried out rituals within halls that echoed with prayers centuries before the jungle reclaimed them. The architecture reflects the remarkable skill of Khmer builders. Long galleries connect one courtyard to another. Intricately carved doorways frame sacred chambers. Stone towers decorated with graceful carvings rise above quiet courtyards, where only birds and insects are heard today. Although many structures have collapsed, enough survives to reveal the extraordinary scale of the original city. One of the site's most remarkable features is its immense size. The outer enclosure alone covers more than 20 square kilometres, making it one of the largest enclosed archaeological complexes ever constructed by the Khmer civilization. Ancient roads connected the sanctuary to distant settlements across the empire, while vast reservoirs supplied water to both pilgrims and nearby communities. Everything suggests careful planning on an astonishing scale. Excavations continue uncovering hidden shrines, bridges, sculptures, and ceremonial buildings scattered throughout the surrounding forest. Many remain only partially explored. Unlike Angkor Wat, where generations of archaeologists have documented nearly every corner, large sections of Bante Preah Khan still wait beneath dense vegetation, preserving countless discoveries for future researchers. The sanctuary also reflects the spiritual diversity of the Khmer Empire. Although primarily dedicated to Hindu traditions during parts of its history, later rulers introduced Buddhist influences that reshaped many temples throughout the complex. Rather than replacing older beliefs entirely, new traditions often blended with those already established, leaving behind a fascinating mixture of religious architecture that mirrors the changing history of the empire itself. Eventually, however, the fortunes of the Khmer Empire began to decline. Political power shifted, trade routes changed, the great cities of the region slowly emptied. As fewer people remained to maintain the vast complex, nature steadily reclaimed what human hands had built. Trees rooted themselves between enormous stone blocks. Walls cracked beneath growing roots. The jungle quietly closed around the forgotten sanctuary until much of it disappeared from sight. Modern archaeology has only begun revealing the true scale of the hidden city. Satellite surveys, aerial mapping, and careful excavations continue expanding our understanding of this remarkable place, showing that it once stood among the greatest ceremonial centres in Southeast Asia. Each new discovery uncovers another piece of a city that history almost allowed to vanish forever. Today, Bante Preah Khan stands among Cambodia's greatest archaeological treasures, not because of hidden riches, not because it rivaled Angkor in fame, but because it preserves one of the largest and least explored sacred landscapes ever created by the Khmer civilization. Hidden beneath the jungle lies a forgotten giant, a city built for kings and pilgrims, a sanctuary consumed by the forest, and one of Southeast Asia's most extraordinary archaeological mysteries, the underground palace, hidden inside a mountain. Hidden within the rugged mountains of western Iran lies a cave unlike almost any other in the ancient world. There are no towering pyramids, no magnificent fortresses, no marble temples standing beneath the open sky. Instead, endless stone chambers, ancient stairways, mysterious inscriptions, and a vast cave complex that has sheltered travellers, soldiers, and forgotten civilizations for more than 2,000 years. For centuries, the mountain guarded its secrets. Its dark passages disappeared into the rock. Legends surrounded its hidden halls. Yet few imagined that deep inside these limestone cliffs rested one of the Middle East's most extraordinary underground monuments. Today, archaeologists know this remarkable place as Karafta Cave, a sprawling underground complex carved into the mountains of western Iran. And even now, many of its greatest mysteries remain hidden within the darkness. The cave lies in the rugged highlands of Iran's Kurdistan region, where rocky mountains rise above broad valleys and scattered forests. The landscape feels both beautiful and isolated. Steep cliffs dominate the horizon. Cold winds sweep across the hills during winter. In summer, the surrounding plains glow beneath the intense mountain sun. At first glance, nothing suggests that an enormous underground world lies concealed inside the limestone cliffs. Unlike natural caves that formed entirely through geological processes, Caraftu was carefully reshaped by human hands. Over many centuries, people carved rooms into the rock. They connected chambers with narrow corridors. Stone staircases linked different levels of the mountain. Windows were cut into the cliff face, allowing daylight to reach deep inside the complex. Rather than serving as a simple shelter, the cave gradually became something far more remarkable. Walking through Caraftu today feels almost like exploring an underground palace. Long passageways lead towards spacious halls. Small chambers branch away into the darkness. Some rooms contain carved niches that may once have held lamps, statues, or sacred objects. Others preserve carefully shaped doorways and windows that overlook the valleys below. Every section reveals evidence that generations of builders continued expanding the complex over hundreds of years. One feature has fascinated historians for generations. Near one of the entrances is an ancient Greek inscription carved directly into the stone. It reads, "Here lives Heracles, may no evil enter." The inscription dates to the Hellenistic period, when Greek influence spread across much of the ancient Near East, following the campaigns of Alexander the Great. Its presence suggests that the cave was occupied or reused long after its earliest chambers had already been carved. Exactly who left the inscription, and why, remains uncertain. The cave itself, however, is considerably older. Archaeologists believe parts of Caraftu were first occupied long before the arrival of the Greeks. Over the centuries, different civilizations adapted the complex to suit their own needs. Some used it as a refuge during times of conflict. Others may have transformed sections into religious sanctuaries or fortified residences. Each generation altered the mountain while preserving much of what earlier builders had created. The result is a remarkable underground maze shaped by centuries of human history. The architecture demonstrates surprising ingenuity. Instead of relying on timber or brick, the builders worked directly with the mountain itself. Entire rooms were carved from solid limestone. Stone columns were left standing to support ceilings. Ventilation openings allowed fresh air to circulate through the chambers. Natural light entered through carefully positioned windows overlooking the cliffs. For an underground complex, it was remarkably comfortable and carefully planned. The cave's elevated position also provided an important advantage. From its windows, the surrounding valleys can be seen for many kilometers. Anyone approaching the mountain would have been visible long before reaching the entrance. Combined with its difficult access and maze-like interior, Caraftu offered both security and concealment, making it an ideal refuge during uncertain times. Yet many questions remain unanswered. Who first began carving these chambers? How long did construction continue? Was the complex originally intended as a fortress, a sanctuary, or a permanent settlement? Without written records from its earliest inhabitants, archaeologists can only piece together the story through the surviving architecture and artifacts left behind. Every new excavation adds another clue, but the complete history of Caraftu remains hidden within the mountain. Eventually, changing kingdoms and shifting trade routes reduced the cave's importance. Its chambers gradually emptied. The carved halls fell silent. Wind echoed through abandoned corridors while the mountain quietly reclaimed the lives once lived within it. For centuries, only local legends preserved memories of the hidden city inside the cliffs. Today, Caraftu Cave stands among Iran's most remarkable archaeological treasures, not because of buried riches, not because of famous kings, but because it preserves an extraordinary underground world where architecture and nature became one. Hidden inside a lonely mountain lies a forgotten palace, a labyrinth carved from living stone, a sanctuary that sheltered countless generations, and one of the ancient world's most fascinating underground mysteries, the ancient waterway that still defies time. Hidden high in the Peruvian Andes lies an engineering masterpiece that has quietly carried water across the mountains for centuries. There are no towering temples, no massive pyramids, no royal palaces overlooking the valleys. Instead, ancient stone channels, crystal-clear mountain water, carefully carved aqueducts, and a forgotten system that continues to function long after the civilization that built it disappeared. For generations, local communities watched fresh water flow across the mountains without fully knowing who first designed the remarkable network beneath their feet. Today, Archaeologists know this extraordinary place as the Pumacocha Aqueduct, one of the most impressive hydraulic systems ever created in the ancient Andes. And despite centuries of changing kingdoms and harsh mountain weather, parts of it still work remarkably well. The aqueduct lies near Lake Pumacocha in Peru's Ayacucho region, high among rugged mountains where cold winds sweep across the grasslands throughout the year. The landscape is breathtaking. Rolling hills stretch toward distant snow-covered peaks. Small streams emerge from natural springs before disappearing into deep valleys. During the rainy season, water fills the mountains with life. During the dry months, every drop becomes precious. It is easy to understand why controlling water became essential for the people who lived here. The aqueduct is believed to have been constructed by the Wari civilization, one of the great Andean cultures that flourished centuries before the rise of the Inca Empire. Long before Machu Picchu stood above the clouds, long before Inca engineers built their famous roads, the Wari were already transforming the mountains through remarkable planning and engineering. Water was at the centre of that achievement. Rather than allowing mountain streams to flow naturally downhill, the builders carefully redirected them through an intricate network of stone-lined canals. Every section followed the natural contours of the landscape. Gentle slopes controlled the speed of the water. Stone-retaining walls protected the channels from erosion. Carefully shaped bends guided the flow across uneven ground without wasting a single drop. The precision is remarkable. Even small errors in elevation could have caused the system to fail. Yet after nearly 1,000 years, portions of the aqueduct continue carrying water exactly as their builders intended. Walking beside the channels today reveals an extraordinary level of craftsmanship. Large stone blocks fit neatly together without mortar. Narrow canals cross rocky hillsides with surprising accuracy. In some places, the water passes through carefully carved openings cut directly into solid rock. Elsewhere, the channels curve gently around the mountains, before continuing toward fertile valleys below. Every metre reflects careful planning rather than simple construction. The aqueduct was more than an engineering project. It was the foundation of daily life. Reliable water allowed nearby communities to irrigate fields, grow crops, and survive in an environment where rainfall could never be guaranteed. Some archaeologists believe the system also carried ceremonial importance. In many ancient Andean cultures, water was considered sacred, closely connected to mountain spirits, agricultural fertility, and the cycle of life itself. Managing water was therefore not only practical but deeply spiritual. One of the greatest mysteries surrounding the aqueduct is how its builders achieved such remarkable precision using only simple tools. Without modern surveying equipment, they successfully calculated gradients across long distances through difficult mountain terrain. The slightest mistake would have interrupted the flow. Instead, the channels demonstrate an understanding of hydraulics that continues to impress engineers today. Eventually, the Wari civilization declined. Political centres were abandoned. Trade networks changed. New societies emerged across the Andes before the Inca later expanded into the region. Yet the aqueduct endured. Mountain rains continued filling its channels. Fresh water continued flowing across the landscape. Long after the builders themselves had vanished, their engineering quietly continued performing the task for which it had been designed. Modern archaeologists and engineers have studied the system with great admiration. Its careful construction demonstrates that ancient Andean civilizations possessed far greater technical knowledge than was once believed. Rather than relying solely on monumental architecture, they mastered the practical science of controlling one of nature's most valuable resources. Today, the Pumacocha Aqueduct stands among Peru's most remarkable archaeological achievements, not because of hidden treasure, not because it belonged to powerful emperors, but because it preserves a working masterpiece of ancient engineering, where mountain water still follows channels carved by human hands centuries ago. Hidden among the high Andes flows a forgotten waterway, a system built with remarkable precision, a legacy that continues to serve the landscape, and one of the ancient world's greatest examples of engineering quietly standing the test of time. The desert fortress forgotten beyond the Nile. Hidden deep within Egypt's western desert stands a fortress that few travellers have ever seen. There are no colossal pyramids, no crowded temples, no towering obelisks carved with the names of pharaohs. Instead, mud brick towers, ancient farms, long abandoned streets, and a forgotten settlement built to survive in one of the harshest landscapes on Earth. For centuries, the desert protected its secrets. Blazing sun baked its walls, sand drifted across its fields. The people who once lived here vanished, leaving behind a remarkably preserved fortress on the very edge of the ancient world. Today, archaeologists know this extraordinary place as al-Dabadib, one of the best preserved Roman settlements in Egypt's remote western desert. Its story reveals how an isolated outpost became a thriving community where engineering, agriculture, and survival came together against extraordinary odds. Al-Dabadib lies within the Karga Oasis, hundreds of kilometers west of the Nile Valley. The surrounding landscape is immense. Golden dunes stretch toward the horizon, rocky escarpments rise from the desert floor. Summer temperatures regularly climb above 40 degrees Celsius. Rain is almost unknown. At first glance, it seems impossible that anyone could have established a permanent settlement here. Yet nearly 2,000 years ago, this empty desert supported farms, workshops, homes, and one of the strongest frontier fortresses in Roman Egypt. The settlement was established during the Roman period, when Egypt formed one of the empire's most valuable provinces. While most Roman cities developed beside rivers or coastlines, al-Dabadib depended entirely on underground water hidden beneath the desert. Without that hidden resource, the settlement could never have existed. At the heart of the community stood a massive mud brick fortress. Its tall walls overlooked the surrounding oasis. Square towers guarded every corner. Narrow entrances allowed defenders to control movement through the settlement. Unlike the grand stone forts found elsewhere in the empire, this one was built almost entirely from sun-dried mud brick, using materials gathered from the surrounding desert itself. Despite its simple appearance, much of the structure still stands today. Walking through the ruins reveals far more than a military outpost. Rows of houses line the ancient streets. Storage rooms remain visible beneath collapsed roofs. Courtyards once echoed with the sounds of families preparing food, repairing tools, and caring for livestock. The settlement was carefully planned, allowing soldiers and civilians to live side by side within the protection of the fortress walls. One of the site's greatest achievements lies beneath the surface. Archaeologists have uncovered an extraordinary network of underground irrigation tunnels known as qanats that carried groundwater across long distances without exposing it to the intense desert heat. These channels supplied fields where wheat, grapes, dates, and other crops could be grown despite the surrounding wilderness. The system required remarkable precision. A slight error in elevation would have stopped the flow entirely, yet the engineers succeeded in bringing life to one of Egypt's driest landscapes. The surrounding fields reveal just how ambitious the settlement once was. Stone boundaries still mark ancient farmland. Remains of irrigation channels stretch across the oasis. Together they show that al-Dabadib was never intended to be an isolated fortress alone. It was a self-sustaining community, carefully designed to survive where survival seemed almost impossible. The fortress also occupied an important strategic position. It formed part of a chain of Roman settlements protecting the desert routes, linking the Nile Valley with distant oases. Merchants crossed these isolated roads carrying food, textiles, glass, and precious goods. Soldiers guarded the routes against raids while ensuring communication across the vast western desert. Even here, far from Rome itself, the empire maintained its presence through careful planning and remarkable engineering. Eventually, however, conditions began to change. Political priorities shifted, trade routes evolved. Maintaining isolated desert settlements became increasingly difficult. Little by little, the population declined. The fields were abandoned. The irrigation tunnels fell silent. Without constant maintenance, the desert slowly reclaimed what generations had built. Sand drifted across empty streets. Roofs collapsed beneath centuries of wind and heat. The fortress became another forgotten landmark scattered across Egypt's endless desert. Modern archaeology has transformed our understanding of the site. Careful surveys have revealed not only the impressive fortress, but also the surrounding farms, water systems, and residential quarters, providing one of the clearest pictures of daily life in a remote Roman frontier community. Every excavation uncovers new evidence of how ordinary people adapted to one of the world's most challenging environments. Today, al-Dabadib stands among Egypt's most remarkable archaeological treasures, not because of famous pharaohs, not because of hidden riches, but because it preserves an entire desert settlement where human ingenuity allowed life to flourish against overwhelming odds. Hidden beyond the Nile lies a forgotten fortress, a city sustained by invisible water, a community built between sand and stone, and one of the ancient world's greatest examples of survival in the heart of the desert, the giant earth wall hidden beneath Africa's forest. Hidden beneath the dense forests of southwestern Nigeria lies one of the largest ancient monuments ever built in Africa. There are no towering pyramids, no massive stone temples, no marble palaces standing above the trees. Instead, an enormous earthen wall, deep ancient ditches, miles of forgotten embankments, and a monument so vast that it remained hidden beneath the forest for centuries. From the ground, much of it is almost impossible to recognize. Trees cover its slopes, vegetation hides its edges. Only from above does its astonishing scale begin to emerge. Today, archaeologists know this remarkable place as Sungbo's Eredo, one of the greatest engineering achievements of medieval Africa and one of the largest earthworks ever constructed anywhere in the world. The monument lies in the tropical forests of Ogun State, where thick vegetation blankets the rolling hills throughout the year. Towering trees shade the landscape, small rivers weave through the valleys, heavy rains nourish the dense forest, gradually covering anything left unattended. It is the perfect environment for an ancient monument to disappear from view. For generations, local communities knew parts of the earthwork existed, but few realized its true size. Stretching for more than 160 kilometers, Sungbo's Eredo forms an immense network of walls and ditches surrounding a vast area of land. In many places, the ditch reaches several meters deep while the surrounding embankment rises high above the forest floor. Together, they create one of the most ambitious construction projects ever undertaken in pre-colonial Africa. According to Yoruba tradition, the monument was built by a powerful and wealthy ruler known as Bilikisu Sungbo. Some legends describe her as a queen of extraordinary influence. Others connect her with the legendary Queen of Sheba, although historians have found no evidence supporting that tradition. Whether the stories preserve real history or centuries of local folklore remains uncertain, yet they demonstrate how deeply the monument became woven into the cultural memory of the region. One of the greatest mysteries surrounding Sungbo's Eredo is its true purpose. Unlike the walls of a conventional fortress, it enclosed an enormous landscape rather than a single city. Some archaeologists believe it marked political boundaries separating powerful kingdoms. Others suggest it protected valuable farmland, trade routes, and important settlements scattered throughout the forest. It may also have served as a powerful symbol of authority, demonstrating the ability of its builders to organize thousands of workers across an immense territory. Whatever its original purpose, the scale of construction remains astonishing. The builders excavated millions of cubic meters of earth using little more than simple hand tools. Without modern machinery, they shaped deep trenches and towering embankments that still survive nearly 1,000 years later. The amount of labour required suggests an organised society capable of planning enormous public works, long before European contact with West Africa. The surrounding region was far from isolated. For centuries, Yoruba kingdoms flourished through agriculture, craftsmanship, and long-distance trade. Merchants carried goods between inland communities and coastal markets. Ideas moved alongside people. Powerful rulers established thriving settlements connected by networks that stretched across much of present-day Nigeria. Sungbo's Eredo was likely part of this larger world, protecting and defining a prosperous landscape hidden beneath the forest canopy. Modern archaeological research continues revealing just how sophisticated the monument truly is. Satellite imagery and aerial surveys have traced long sections of the earthwork previously concealed beneath dense vegetation. Each new survey expands our understanding of its remarkable scale, while raising new questions about the people who designed it. Despite its immense size, much of the monument remains surprisingly unexplored. Large sections still lie beneath thick forest, waiting for future excavations. Eventually, political boundaries changed. New kingdoms rose, trade routes shifted. The forests gradually reclaimed the abandoned embankments. Trees rooted themselves along the ancient walls. Leaves filled the deep ditches. Century after century, nature quietly concealed one of Africa's greatest engineering achievements beneath a blanket of green. Today, Sungbo's Erido stands among the continent's most extraordinary archaeological treasures, not because of buried gold, not because of famous emperors, but because it preserves the remarkable story of a civilization capable of reshaping an entire landscape through determination, planning, and extraordinary engineering. Hidden beneath the forests of Nigeria lies a giant earth wall, a monument measured not in meters, but in miles, a forgotten masterpiece built from the land itself, and one of Africa's greatest archaeological mysteries, still emerging from the trees after nearly 1,000 years. The desert monument that refused to be forgotten. Hidden within the sunlit deserts of the United Arab Emirates stands a monument older than the pyramids of Giza. There are no towering temples, no royal palaces, no cities filled with marble streets. Instead, a circular stone tomb, massive limestone blocks, ancient carvings, and the silent remains of a community that flourished more than 4,000 years ago. For centuries, the desert guarded its secrets. Wind carried sand across its walls. Generations passed without knowing that one of Arabia's oldest monuments still stood beneath the blazing sun. Today, archaeologists know this remarkable place as the hilly North Tomb, one of the finest surviving monuments of the Bronze Age in the Arabian Peninsula. Its story reaches back to a time when the deserts were home not to isolated tribes, but to prosperous farming communities connected by trade routes that stretched across the ancient world. The tomb stands within the Hili Archaeological Park near the modern city of Al Ain, close to the border between the United Arab Emirates and Oman. The surrounding landscape is unlike the endless dunes many people imagine when thinking of Arabia. Natural springs emerge from beneath the earth. Palm groves provide shade. Fertile fields break the desert landscape. For thousands of years, these precious sources of water allowed communities to settle in a region where life depended entirely on careful management of every drop. Around 4,000 years ago, this oasis became one of the most important settlements of the Nar civilization. Long before the rise of the great Islamic cities, long before the famous caravan routes crossed Arabia, the people living here had already built thriving villages supported by farming, animal husbandry, and long-distance trade. Copper from nearby mountains, pottery, stone vessels, and precious goods moved between Arabia, Mesopotamia, and the Indus Valley, linking Hili to civilizations hundreds of kilometers away. At the heart of this remarkable community stood the Hili North Tomb. Built from carefully cut limestone blocks, the monument originally formed a perfect circular structure, measuring more than 12 meters across. Its thick stone walls enclosed a burial chamber used by generations of the community rather than a single ruler. Unlike the royal tombs of Egypt, this monument appears to have honoured an entire society instead of one powerful individual. One of its most remarkable features survives on the entranceways. Beautifully carved reliefs decorate the stone. Human figures appear beside antelopes, cattle, and other animals that once lived across the region. Although weathered by thousands of years of desert wind, the carvings still display remarkable craftsmanship. They offer a rare glimpse into the beliefs, environment, and artistic traditions of one of Arabia's earliest civilizations. Archaeologists have discovered that the tomb contained the remains of many individuals, men, women, children. Rather than serving as a single burial, it became a shared resting place used over generations. Objects buried alongside the dead included pottery, jewellery, beads, and finely crafted tools, suggesting that the people believed these possessions would continue to hold importance beyond death. The surrounding settlement was equally impressive. Excavations uncovered stone houses arranged around courtyards, storage buildings, ancient wells, and irrigation systems that allowed farming to flourish despite the harsh desert climate. Together, these discoveries reveal a highly organised society that successfully adapted to one of the world's most demanding environments. One of the greatest surprises for archaeologists was the sophistication of the builders. The limestone blocks were carefully shaped and fitted together with remarkable precision. The monument has survived more than 4 millennia despite earthquakes, harsh temperatures, and constant desert winds. Its continued survival reflects not only skilled craftsmanship, but also a deep understanding of construction techniques that have stood the test of time. Eventually, however, the Nar civilization declined. Trade networks shifted, settlements changed, new cultures spread across the Arabian Peninsula. The oasis remained inhabited, but the great communal tomb gradually fell out of use. Sand slowly accumulated around its walls. The memory of the people who built it faded into history while the monument quietly endured beneath the desert sky. Modern archaeological excavations have restored much of the structure, allowing visitors to appreciate one of the oldest surviving monuments in the United Arab Emirates. Every carved stone and carefully preserved wall offers another glimpse into a civilization that helped shape the early history of Arabia long before written records became common. Today, the hilly North Tomb stands among the Arabian Peninsula's greatest archaeological treasures, not because of buried gold, not because it belonged to a legendary king, but because it preserves the remarkable story of an ancient community whose memory survived through stone when almost everything else was lost. Hidden beside a desert oasis lies a forgotten monument, a tomb built for generations, a masterpiece that refused to disappear, and one of the oldest surviving windows into the earliest civilizations of Arabia, the royal cemetery before the pharaohs. Hidden beneath the desert sands of southern Egypt lies a cemetery older than the pyramids. There are no colossal temples, no towering obelisks, no statues of mighty pharaohs watching over the Nile. Instead, simple mud brick tombs, ancient burial chambers, royal graves, and the resting place of the rulers who lived before Egypt became the civilization the world remembers today. For centuries, the desert concealed this remarkable necropolis. Its tombs disappeared beneath drifting sand. Its kings were forgotten. Yet beneath the surface rested the earliest chapter of one of history's greatest civilizations. Today, archaeologists know this extraordinary place as el-Kab, the ancient royal cemetery of Abydos, and one of the most important archaeological sites in all of Egypt. Long before the Great Pyramid rose above Giza, long before the Valley of the Kings welcomed its famous rulers, the first kings of a newly united Egypt were laid to rest here. El-Kab lies on the edge of the desert near Abydos, west of the Nile River. The surrounding landscape is stark and silent. Golden sand stretches toward rocky hills. Dry winds sweep across the plain. The fertile valley of the Nile lies only a short distance away, creating a striking contrast between life and death. For the ancient Egyptians, this boundary between green farmland and open desert carried deep symbolic meaning. It was here that many believed the journey into the afterlife began. Around 5,000 years ago, Egypt was still taking shape. Small kingdoms lined the Nile. Powerful regional rulers competed for control. Eventually, the country became united under some of its earliest kings, marking the beginning of the first dynasty. Those rulers chose el-Kab as their final resting place. Their tombs were unlike the great pyramids that would appear centuries later. Built from mud brick and timber, they were simple in appearance but enormous for their time. Each burial complex contained multiple chambers. Storage rooms held food, pottery, tools, jewellery, and ceremonial objects intended to accompany the ruler into the next world. Every tomb reflected the growing belief that death was not an end, but the beginning of another existence. Among the most famous burials is that of King Narmer, often identified as the ruler who united Upper and Lower Egypt. Nearby lie the tombs of other early kings, whose reigns laid the foundations of Egyptian civilization. Although little remains above ground today, these graves preserve the origins of royal Egypt itself. One of the site's most remarkable discoveries involves the people buried alongside the kings. Archaeologists uncovered hundreds of subsidiary graves surrounding several royal tombs. Many scholars believe these belong to servants, officials, and attendants who were buried at the same time as the ruler, possibly to continue serving their king in the afterlife. The practice disappeared in later dynasties, making these early burials a fascinating glimpse into beliefs that existed during the birth of the Egyptian state. The cemetery also reveals the rapid development of Egyptian society. Excavations uncovered finely crafted pottery, ivory carvings, stone vessels, copper tools, and some of the earliest examples of hieroglyphic writing ever discovered. These simple labels and inscriptions mark the beginning of one of history's most enduring writing systems. Even in these earliest royal tombs, the foundations of Egyptian administration, religion, and culture were already emerging. Centuries later, el-Kab gained an even greater significance. Ancient Egyptians came to believe that this was the burial place of Osiris, the powerful god of the underworld and resurrection. Pilgrims travelled from across Egypt to honour him. Temples were built nearby, offerings filled the sacred landscape. The cemetery transformed from a royal burial ground into one of the most important religious destinations in the ancient world. Eventually, however, Egypt's kings chose new burial places. Royal cemeteries moved north, pyramids rose across the desert. Later pharaohs rested in hidden valleys carved into the cliffs of Thebes. el-Ka'ab slowly faded from prominence. Its ancient tombs became buried beneath drifting sand, while newer monuments captured the attention of future generations. Modern archaeology has restored its rightful place in history. Excavations have revealed that this quiet cemetery preserves the earliest royal chapter of ancient Egypt. Every tomb, every pottery vessel, every inscription tells the story of a civilization just beginning its remarkable journey. Today, el-Ka'ab stands among Egypt's greatest archaeological treasures, not because of towering monuments, not because of hidden treasure, but because it preserves the resting place of the kings who came before the pharaohs the world would one day remember. Hidden beneath the desert lies a forgotten royal cemetery, a place where Egypt's first rulers were laid to rest, and where one of history's greatest civilizations quietly began its story. The forgotten Temple Hill that watched civilization begin. Hidden beneath a quiet hill in northern Iraq lie the remains of a settlement older than history itself. There are no colossal pyramids, no marble temples, no mighty walls surrounding an ancient capital. Instead, layer upon layer of forgotten cities, early temples, mud brick homes, and the remains of a community that witnessed the birth of civilization itself. For thousands of years, people built upon this hill. Each generation raised new houses over the ruins of the old. Each century buried another chapter beneath the earth, until an entire history of early Mesopotamia became hidden beneath a single mound. Today, archaeologists know this remarkable place as Tepe Gawra, one of the oldest continuously occupied settlements ever discovered in northern Mesopotamia. Its story stretches back more than 6,000 years, to a time long before kings ruled great empires and long before writing transformed human history. Tepe Gawra stands on the fertile plains near modern Mosul, where the Tigris River helped create one of the richest agricultural landscapes in the ancient world. The surrounding countryside appears peaceful. Open fields stretch toward the horizon. Gentle hills rise above the plain. At first glance, nothing suggests that this modest mound preserves thousands of years of human history beneath its surface. Like many Mesopotamian sites, Tepe Gawra is a tell, a hill formed not by nature, but by people. When old buildings collapsed, new ones were constructed directly above them. Century after century, the settlement slowly rose higher until an artificial hill covered the remains of dozens of forgotten communities. Every layer tells a different story. Every excavation uncovers another chapter of humanity's earliest experiments with organized society. The settlement first appeared during the 6th millennium BC, when farming communities were spreading across Mesopotamia. The earliest inhabitants built simple mud brick houses surrounded by cultivated fields. They raised livestock, stored grain, crafted pottery, and gradually transformed a small village into an important regional centre. As the centuries passed, Tepe Gawra continued to grow. Its architecture became more sophisticated. Large public buildings appeared. Broad courtyards connected clusters of homes, and some of the earliest known temples began rising above the settlement. These were not monumental structures like those built by later civilizations, yet they reveal something extraordinary. Communities were beginning to organize themselves around shared religious beliefs and public institutions, laying the foundations for the first cities that would later emerge across Mesopotamia. Archaeologists have uncovered more than 20 major occupational layers beneath the mound. Each represents a different period of settlement. Each preserves changes in architecture, technology, and daily life. Together, they provide one of the most complete records of cultural development ever discovered in the ancient Near East. One of the site's greatest discoveries came from its temples. Unlike ordinary homes, these buildings featured carefully planned layouts, thick walls, and ceremonial spaces where religious rituals likely took place. Some contained altars. Others preserved evidence of offerings left behind by worshippers thousands of years ago. Although the names of their gods have been lost, the buildings reveal that organized religion already played an important role in these early communities. The people of Tepe Gawra were also skilled craftsmen. Excavations uncovered finely painted pottery, stone tools, copper objects, decorative seals, and delicate jewellery crafted from materials brought from distant regions. These discoveries show that even during prehistoric times, long-distance trade already connected communities across Mesopotamia and beyond. Ideas moved alongside goods, so did technology. Generation after generation expanded the settlement while adapting to changing conditions. Some buildings were abandoned, others were rebuilt. New cultures arrived and left their mark upon the mound. Rather than belonging to a single civilization, Tepe Gara became a living record of thousands of years of continuous human occupation. Eventually, however, the settlement lost its importance. Nearby cities grew larger, political centres shifted, trade routes changed. The hill was gradually abandoned, leaving its temples and homes to collapse beneath wind-blown soil. Over time, the memories of the people who built them disappeared completely. Modern archaeology has transformed the mound into one of the world's most valuable windows into prehistoric Mesopotamia. Every excavation reveals how ordinary villages slowly evolved into organized societies long before history recorded the names of kings or kingdoms. Today, Tepe Gara stands among Iraq's most remarkable archaeological sites, not because of famous rulers, not because of hidden treasure, but because it preserves thousands of years of uninterrupted human history beneath a single hill. Hidden beneath the Mesopotamian plain lies a forgotten temple mound, a place where villages became civilizations, where the earliest chapters of urban life quietly unfolded, and where humanity took some of its very first steps toward the ancient world we know today.